Hi, welcome to Rock and Metal Invasion. My name is Steve. Coming up on the show today, we are doing Down for the Count, the Y&T album review, and I've got the author Tim Durling here to talk to me about it. How you going, Tim?
I'm doing really good, Steve. Thanks for having me on, and you, of course, are a contributor to the book, so you're a part of this too.
Yes, no, absolutely, very good. Yeah, no, it's very honored to be asked to give my little opinion on three of the albums from their discography. But yeah, so this is actually your second book, eh, Tim? And it's the second time you've been on my show to talk about one of your books. So uh, is this a new sort of thing for you? You think there's going to be more books down the line, or?
Yes, the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on to talk about my book Unspooled, about the eight tracks in the '80s, and of course, now the Y&T book, which is the current thing. Yeah, and it's given me some ideas for maybe to keep doing this. It's I really enjoy the response. The cool thing about the Y&T book, since it's been out, it's actually I'm starting to sell some more copies of Unspooled. Because I think that when people go on Amazon and when they look under my name as author, they'll see Unspooled, which that's always what would draw me in, right? If I got an album by an artist and it would say, oh, by the way, they have these ones too.
Yeah.
It's the same type of thing. So yeah, it's been really cool. The response to both books have been great, but the Y&T one is selling really, really well. And I'm very, very pleased with the response to it.
Yeah, cool, cool. So this is a panel book, right? For those who haven't read it or seen it yet or know too much, is which is for me like a bit of a new idea. I hadn't really heard about it. I know Martin's done a panel book before. Martin Popoff has done a panel book like that. Is that who you got the idea from? Is that pretty much the inspiration?
Absolutely, absolutely modeled these after Martin's album by album series. He's done several of them. I have the Rush one and the Queen one. The Queen one is one of my favorites of all of his books. But yeah, he just gathered a panel of, get some people together, ask them all the same questions, and just print out the responses. And I thought it was a really interesting way to get different perspectives on the same music. Because within this book, I've got people like Martin who were aware of Y&T from their very first album, and then I've got people that I asked that have just gotten into the band, and then I've got a lot of people that got into them maybe in the mid '80s or whatever. So, we're all hearing the same music, but we all hear it differently. And I thought I would ask some questions on each of the 12 studio albums, and man, everybody stepped up to the plate, yourself included, and also the fact that it came together rather quickly, and I think that's because I had, people were coming to me with content, which was fantastic. I just had to put it together in some sort of order. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was really it's a really easy way to put a book together and get some good insight into music. And I've picked up on things that I've never noticed before about this band. I've been a fan of this band for decades. So yeah, it's been good all around.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, actually, that was going to be sort of my next question. Sort of like, I guess this was an easier book to put together as far as the amount of work that you have to put in compared to Unspooled, which was pretty much mainly all your words.
Unspooled was pretty labor intensive.
Yeah.
My good friend Matt Phillips did such a wonderful job with the layout, and it's much more. There's a lot more graphics in Unspooled. This one, I mean, aside from the cover, which we can get into the cover too, but aside from that, basically there's black and white photos of the fronts and backs of the albums, and yeah, it was a lot. I don't know. In some ways, I feel like I got more of my writing into the Y&T book because I did have a lot of contributors to Unspooled, but Unspooled was such a specific. It sort of served two purposes, I mean, anyone who's got the book knows it talks about the history of the record club, only 8 tracks that existed throughout most of the 1980s, which a lot of people didn't know that 8 tracks came out that late. But it's also got personal collecting stories. This one is about Y&T's music, album by album, and talking about each of those albums. And so It's one of the things I've noticed, it's an awful lot easier to describe to people what the book is about, because Unspooled is kind of not complicated. I'm very proud of it, but it's a very hard book to describe. It's just like, well, you just have to see it.
Yeah,
You'll know what I'm talking.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's right. I think so. I contributed to three. I think three of the albums on here, and like you said, you've got actually quite a wide variety of different panelists, because you've got people who've been into the band right from the start, people who are sort of new to the band, and I guess I'm kind of in that 80s. I'm that 80s kind of guy who got into them sort of in the sort of mid 80s, late 80s kind of thing. Um, what was your selection process for panelists? Did you have any was that sort of your idea to have a bit of a variety, or?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been, and I talk about it in my introduction to the book. It was quite a long time before I actually met people that were into Y&T or even knew who they were. I
Yeah.
got into them in 1990 when the 10 album came out. And I always sort of had my ear to the ground a little bit more, I guess. I'm kind of a music nerd that way, like music minutia and reading the rock magazines. And even if I wasn't into bands, I like to have a good kind of general knowledge about who they were and what songs they did. So I knew about Y&T, but, they just, you talk to a certain amount of people that like, let's say we all like Def Leppard and Winger and Skid Row, but you throw Y&T into the mix, and that would always be like a speed bump. They're like, wait a second, what, who? So I had to. I looked at people that I'd been on YouTube shows with, like yourself, and people that have been on my channel, and people that I knew were into Y&T. And I just reached out and said, hey, do you want to take part in this? And it's great because, everybody's got different periods of the band that they're partial to. Some people prefer the earliest stuff, and some people like the later stuff. And some people are like me, they just basically like the whole catalog, maybe not equally, but you just got into the band and stayed into the band. So it was really cool. I think I got a really nice cross section of people to talk about the albums. I've got 4 people per chapter, per album. I ask them all the same questions. And it was really cool to get the different perspectives on all of these albums. Like a lot of people will tell you that, basically Y&T, it's all about Earthshaker, Black Tiger, Mean Streak, Maybe, and Rock We Trust, those early 80s A&M albums. But, I had so many people that I had to designate because so many people wanted to talk about Down for the Count, Contagious, and 10, which to some people were the quote unquote bad Y&T albums. I don't certainly think that, but so it was great. I had, I got more than enough to talk about. Some people only do 2 albums because I ran out of space, but I got some old friends of mine in here. I've got people that I've just met. I've got people that have YouTube channels. I got people that are just music fans. I really think that there was a need for a book like this because, to my knowledge, and I still, after almost a month of it being out, I don't think there's ever been a book on this band before. And any band that's been around for 50 years should have a book. There should be something written about them. And there's been lots of great articles, and there's been lots of mentions of them in other books, but there's never been a full book dedicated to Y&T. And I thought, well, if I guess it's me that's going to be doing it. I love how it came. It's totally. But yeah, it was I'm really appreciative of everyone that contributed to this book that took the time out to do it. And it did require, you went back and listened to the albums and thought about the questions, and I got some really, really cool answers and really insightful answers.
Yeah. That's one thing about this book that, I mean, obviously, you could pretty much read it cover to cover if you wanted to, but you could also go, I'm going to listen to Contagious, and as I'm listening to it, I'm going to, read that chapter and sort of, read people's sort of opinions and so forth. So it's quite, I can imagine, I don't know, have you had anyone sort of give you some feedback on how they're sort of reading the book?
Yeah, I've had a lot of people come back and tell me you know, they've been listening to more Y&T
Mm,
after reading
mm.
it. That's all I ever wanted. That's all I've
Yeah,
ever wanted
yeah,
to do is spread the word about this band, right?
yeah.
I think most people, if you're really into music, I talk about this in my introduction. If you're really into music, there's all kinds of bands we like that are world famous, pretty much sold a lot of records the world over. But then there are those niche bands that not everybody knows about and just didn't quite break through. And for me,
Yeah.
Y&T's always been on the top of that list that I don't understand why
Mm,
they weren't as big as Van Halen or Kiss or Aerosmith. And I still think that their music is good enough to compete with, the very, very most popular of rock bands out there. And so when people tell me hey, yeah, I bought a couple Y&T albums, great. That's perfect. Even Sean Kelly, who, I've gotten to know quite well. Great guy. He plays with Coney Hatch. He plays with
yeah.
Lee Aaron. He's played with a ton of classic Canadian acts, and he's done, he's played with Dee Snider, and
Mm,
he's written a couple of great books on his own. He contributed to the forward to this, and he came back and told me, "Yeah, man, I've been listening to more and more of this band. I forgot how good they were, and that's
mm.
great. And
Yeah.
so if I can reintroduce people to them, if I can introduce people to them, that's all I've ever tried to do is spread the word about this band Y&T and why I think they're so overlooked as far as hard rock bands go. They've got a little bit of something for everybody. They can be really heavy, they can be melodic, they can be
Mm,
kind of all points in between. Yeah, and I'm really glad that there's something out there now, a document that kind of points people in the right direction. Says, okay, you like this band? This is Here are their studio album. This is what their live albums are. Here are their compilations.
mm.
Now go, go get some
Yeah.
Y&T.
Because they're quite an interesting band in the sense they've got a lot of albums, like quite a lot of albums, but they never really had that big hit album. Yes, they've got a few albums like you say, Mean Streets was sort of the go-to album maybe, or they've got some sort of critically acclaimed albums, but none of them were really big hits. Yet they always were still given another chance. On a major label, A&M or Geffen, they were like, oh, it's okay, put out another album. I don't know if a band like this would survive these days. You get like one shot at it and that's it. Do you know what I mean? But they had a lot of chances, and it was kind of building at times, and they had a few like went up, and then the next one didn't really just keep going up. They have a few spikes, but then it just yeah.
Yeah, they had lots of, they were on London Records in the 70s when they were
Right.
called the full name Yesterday Today. Then they signed with A&M, and that's their best known period and their most
Mm,
successful period. Because In Rock We Trust almost went gold in the
mm,
States. Summertime Girls hit the top 100, not on
mm.
the same album. Then they did the two Geffen albums, but they've been around for such a long time that it was almost their time had almost passed as far as some people were concerned, like in the
Yeah.
industry, which is a real shame. But yeah, they had a lot of big tours. They were like special guests, opening acts. They toured with just about every big hard rock band of the era,
Mm,
and just honing their craft, right? And they, it's talked about a lot. I don't think that particularly a label that was maybe equipped to work with a band like this that was harder rock. They weren't Bryan Adams or Styx, or they weren't just rock. They were hard rock, and that's you need a different type of
yeah.
marketing for that. So there were a lot of things. They changed producers every time, and I think it
Mm,
was because they were hoping for that magic combination
mm,
that
mm,
would take them
mm,
over the top. But
mm.
yeah, it's luckily, the music's still out there, and it's still there for people to discover. And best of all, I mean, Dave Meniketti's the only original guy that's not only left in the band, but he's the only surviving original guy, lead singer, lead guitar player. He's
Mm,
still doing it.
mm,
There's still Y&T still exists, and they're still playing shows. So
mm.
yeah, it was time to get something out there to celebrate that fact that they've been doing it for such a long time.
Yeah. And with the internet now, everyone can always go back and hear this stuff. So it's not like, you don't have access to it. So, and there's like quite a bit to consume and check out if you didn't check it out back in the day. But, also too, what I found interesting in it, and I was kind of inspired when I was reading about uh, those albums, is those 90s albums. So those two that came out in the sort of mid and late 90s, I don't have physical copies of. But reading about it in here, it's like, oh yeah, because I had heard them, but not for a long time, online and stuff. So made me want to go back and check those albums out again, because I think some people wouldn't even know that they put those albums out.
I think there's a lot of people that probably think that Y&T put out 2, 3, maybe 4 albums in the 80s. In Rock We Trust is one that comes up a lot when you're crate digging.
Yeah.
It might, me personally, I see Mean Streak almost as much. I see the Open Fire, the live album, a lot.
Yeah.
And some people maybe thought that was all they did. And people to pick this up and go, geez, they had 12 albums, like 12 studio albums and all these live albums, these compilations. Yeah, they did a lot, and it's a rich catalog to explore. I mean, the 70s albums are very much building blocks on, what a band like Van Halen would go through the roof success-wise with, building on stuff. I mean, Y&T were there. They were there in the early to mid 70s, playing the Starwood and the Whiskey and those classic clubs, and then bands that ended up being big in the 80s, guys like Dokken and Quiet Riot and Rat. They were there watching them. Even Lars Ulrich went to see Y&T in like 1980 when he first moved to California. So, this is a band that a lot of big bands cut their teeth by going to see them live and saying, okay, this is how you do it. This is how you put on a stage show. This is how you make things exciting for people. And unfortunately, bands that came after them, a lot of them went past them as far as success. But like you said, the music's still out there to explore, and it's all laid out here. If you've got a couple of their albums, and this is a quick, easy way to say, okay, here's what I'm missing. Here's what I need to try and look for.
Yeah. And also I probably wanted to say as well that it's not just like a whole total fanboy book. Like, it's not like us just saying, oh, it's all amazing, it's all great. I noticed for myself when I was reading what I said, at times I'm a little bit critical, of some of the songs, or, some of the choices that they made. And I'm assuming that's okay. That's kind of, you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't want, it would have been really boring if everybody agreed that everything that they did was great. And and I think that the guys in the band, they're music fans. It's like, you can love a band, but doesn't mean you are on board with every single decision they made and every single song they put up. Like I've said many times, I never cared much for Barroom Boogie.
Yeah.
I always thought that they were capable of better than that. And we talk about that in the book, but we're all here. Everybody in this book is here because we're Y&T fans.
Yeah.
It's just that, I bet you if you were to ask most of the people on these panels, name your top 3 Y&T albums, I bet they'd be all different. Even if they were the same 3 albums, they'd be in a different order. That's okay. My personal favorite is 10. Lots of people like Earthshaker. I love Earthshaker, but yeah, it's about, we're fans. We want to talk about the band, sort of warts and all. They did so many things right. Here's one spot where it could have been a little, it's not negative in any way. It's just like, look, we love this band. This is what we think. Feel free to agree or disagree.
Yeah. And of course, you got this great cover, which really adds a lot to the book, doesn't it? Do you want to tell us about that? How that came about?
Very, 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 very happy with this. It's an honor to have Hugh Syme, cover designer for so many classic albums and worked with so many great artists to design this cover for me. I love the cover. It's a steampunk looking thing. When I look at it, Hugh, of course, designed the album cover for Contagious. So that's why I reached out to him, because he did have something to do with one of their albums. But I get a Queensryche vibe when I look at this to this day. This looks like something between like Promised Land and Here in the Now Frontier. And that's fine with me, but it's an awesome cover. I love what he did with it. And, it's certainly eye-catching. I know people have looked at that and absolutely going, like, Hugh Syme did this? Oh, I'm going to check this out. And that's great, I'm thrilled beyond belief. I can't, my younger self would have been like, Hugh Syme designed something I did? Like, it's pretty amazing. I love the fact that he put the Y, the yesterday, way in the back, and the T, today, is up front. I didn't ask him to do that. He just came up with that. And, because he designed Contagious, and people know what that album cover looks like if you're watching, it's got the broken vial or whatever. Well, he's got a little vial on top of the T here. That's his little nod to the
Right.
album cover that he designed. I didn't notice that at first. When I
Yeah.
did, I was like, oh, that is so cool. Typical of Hugh's work. The more you look
Yeah.
at it, the more you see in it.
Yeah. The little details. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So obviously you're thinking maybe of doing another book. You don't have to sort of reveal anything, but you know, is there a band that you think is a little bit like Y&T that maybe, you know, there has fans but doesn't have a book or doesn't have very many books? My choice I was thinking was Crocus. I think Crocus maybe would be a good book. They're kind of similar. They remind me a little bit of Y&T. But what about yourself? Do you have any thoughts about a band that maybe needs a book or should have a book or
Oh,
a little bit similar?
I absolutely do, Steve. As a matter of fact, I don't want to disclose names. I'm actually starting to put, not
Yeah.
pen to paper, but I'm actually starting to do a little typing and gathering some thoughts together. And it will be similar, but not a carbon copy of the format of the Y&T book. And it's actually a band that sold more copies, more albums, but as far as I know, still no book. The Crocus is a good choice because, and very much like Y&T, I bet you people would be surprised if they thought that they, started in 80, 82, 83 to find out how far back their catalog goes and how many new albums they released too. There's lots of bands out there. Like I thought about, different bands that I love. It would have to be a band that I loved and I knew their catalog really well.
Yeah.
But like for example, love Def Leppard. There's lots of Def Leppard books. There's nothing I can really contribute to writing a Def Leppard book. But there are bands that I just think it's important to document this stuff. And, you can look up the stuff online, but there's something to me, I'm old fashioned. I like physical media. I like owning actually product, whether it be a CD or a record or whatever. And to me, there's something about a book that solidifies that. Here's the information about whoever this is in one place when I want to read it. And you're right. You're absolutely right. You don't have to sit down and read this book cover to cover. You say, I want to read about Mean Streak and I want to listen to Mean Streak. You can go right to that chapter, go to your table of contents, boom, and you're there.
That's right.
Yes, I'm definitely in the very, very beginning stages of another book. And, you'll know when it goes farther along for sure. But, it's given me, and learning, the process that I went through to put this book together, I've learned some invaluable lessons from it that I'm going to use moving forward. So, you can teach an old dog new tricks, put it that way.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, Tim. So, if anyone wants to purchase a copy, it's Amazon, I guess. Amazon's the place to go, one of the better places to go. That's where I got my copy from. But
yeah, it's strictly through Amazon, and it's Amazon wherever your home country's Amazon is. Just look up down for the count, Y&T, Tim Durling, whatever, you'll see it come up. So I thank everybody that's supported the book and everybody that's that's reached out to me to show their pictures of them holding the book. I love that. So
yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, there we go. So thanks for coming on, Tim. And if you want to check out his book, go to Amazon and you'll be able to pick up a copy of it there. Of course, don't also forget Tim has his own YouTube channel, Tim's Vinyl Confession, so you can check that one out as well. All right. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you later. Okay. See ya.